For 7 long years, Chima Okafor lived in a world of silence. The vibrant city of Lagos, with its busy streets, honking cars, and the constant hum of life, was nothing but a distant blur to him. His father, Chief Chigozie Okafor, a billionaire importer, had spent millions trying to restore his son's hearing, consulting doctors and specialists from across Nigeria. Despite all the treatments, there was no breakthrough. The silence that enveloped Chima remained unbroken, leaving his father feeling both helpless and heartbroken. Chief Chigozie was a man of power, wealth, and influence, but there was one thing he couldn't fix: his son's silence. He had tried everything: the best medical experts, the latest treatments, and the most cutting-edge technology. Yet, each doctor he consulted seemed more focused on extorting money than actually helping Chima. They promised hope, but each promise fell short. The medical reports were inconclusive, the procedures ineffective. It was as if Chima's condition had no answer. For Chigozie, the weight of his son's silence became unbearable. Every day, he watched Chima try to communicate, his eyes filled with frustration, his gestures unable to bridge the gap between them. Chigozie had spent most of his life dealing with powerful people, negotiating deals that changed the face of Lagos. But nothing, not even his wealth, could break the barrier between his son and the world of sound. The pain of seeing his son trapped in a silent world echoed through their mansion, a space that was filled with everything money could buy yet lacked the one thing Chigozie wanted most: hope for his son's future. Hello guys, welcome to my channel where interesting stories of love, communication, and empathy are told. If you're enjoying this already, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, share with your friends, and tell me your thoughts in the comments section below. But amidst the growing tension, the Okafor mansion had another presence. Ogechi, the young maid, moved quietly through the halls, unnoticed by most, but very much a part of the daily rhythm of the household. She had worked for the Okafors for years, ever since her mother, Chigozie, had recommended her to work in the home. Ogechi's mother was a traditional healer from a small village in the heart of Nigeria, where knowledge of herbs and natural remedies had been passed down through generations. Though Ogechi had not received formal schooling due to financial constraints, her mother's teachings had instilled in her a deep sense of caring for others. Ogechi had always dreamed of studying modern medicine, but the dream seemed impossible, given her financial struggles. She had often watched Chima's struggles with deep empathy, but what she didn't know was that her chance to help him would soon come, not from medical textbooks, but from the knowledge she had inherited from her mother. Chigozie's frustration and despair continued to grow. The doctors had told him the same thing over and over again. There is no cure. It's congenital. It's irreversible. The silence in Chima's life became a prison. Chigozie stood in his office, staring out at the bustling city of Lagos, feeling the weight of his son's silence on his chest. The lights of the city, the sound of traffic, the laughter of children in the distance, everything was so alive. Yet for Chima, it was all silent. He walked slowly to the window and looked down, watching the busy streets below, knowing his son would never be able to hear the world in the same way. His heart clenched. He couldn't bear it anymore. No matter how many doctors he saw, no matter how much money he spent, the silence remained. His son's future was slipping away with every day that passed, and nothing seemed to be able to change that. Chigozie turned away from the window and sighed deeply, wondering if he would ever hear his son's voice. Ogechi had always felt out of place in the grand Okafor mansion. Despite the wealth and luxury surrounding her, she had grown up with a different understanding of life, one rooted in the simplicity of village traditions. She was a maid in the house, but she carried a quiet wisdom with her. Her mother, Chigozie, had been a healer known for using herbs and traditional remedies to treat ailments in their small village. Ogechi had spent her childhood learning these remedies, understanding the body and its natural ways of healing. Yet, she had always felt drawn to something more: modern medicine. She wanted to know more about the world that existed outside her mother's teachings, a world where science and medicine worked together to heal. But the money for such studies was a distant dream. Her mother's teachings were all she had, And it was in those lessons that Ogechi had come to understand the power of intuition. There was something powerful in listening, truly listening, to the body. She had witnessed miracles in the village children who had been misdiagnosed by doctors, their problems overlooked until a healer saw them for what they truly were. Ogechi had always been aware of Chima's condition, but it wasn't until one quiet afternoon, as she passed through the living room, that something caught her eye. Chima was sitting by the window, his small hands rubbing his ears with increasing intensity. Ogechi paused. This was not just a habit or frustration, there was something more. She had seen this before. In her village, there had been children who were misdiagnosed with hearing loss, when in fact, they had something as simple as an earwax blockage. At that moment, Ogechi knew something. She didn't have a medical degree. She didn't have a stethoscope or a syringe. But what she did have was a deep understanding of the body's signals, a gift passed down through her mother's healing hands. Ogechi hesitated, wondering if she should step in. Would Chief Chigozie even trust her with such a thing? She wasn't a doctor, just a maid, someone whose place was to serve, not to intervene. But something inside her nudged her forward, urging her to take a chance. What if she could help? What if this silence Chima had been living in wasn't something that had to define him forever? Ogechi had worked in the Okafor mansion long enough to know the rhythm of their household. She knew when the family was busy with meetings, when the staff was preoccupied, and when the house would be calm enough for her to quietly act. That afternoon, she slipped into the living room where Chima sat, lost in his world. He was unaware of her presence, absorbed in his silent struggle. She knelt beside him and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. His wide, confused eyes met hers. Ogechi smiled softly, trying to reassure him. "Chima," she said in a soft voice, "can I help you with something?" Chima blinked at her, his expression uncertain. He couldn't communicate like other children, not in the way that most people understood. But Ogechi had always seen the frustration in his eyes, the way he tried to make others understand his needs. She knelt beside him, her hand hovering near his ear. "I think I know what might be bothering you," she said gently. Chima's eyes followed her hand, his face still uncertain. She motioned to his ear, and for a moment he hesitated, but then nodded slightly. Ogechi knew she had to move quickly before anyone noticed. She had no medical tools, no proper equipment, but she had something even more valuable: instinct. Carefully, she touched the folds of his ear, her fingers tracing the edges. As she gently pressed, she felt the blockage. A large, compacted plug of earwax was lodged in his ear canal. Something so simple, yet so overlooked by every doctor Chigozie had consulted. It wasn't a disease. It wasn't something that required expensive treatment or surgery. It was a basic condition, a condition that had been missed by everyone who had treated him. Ogechi felt a rush of certainty. This was the answer. She didn't need to be a doctor to see that. Her mother had always told her that sometimes the most obvious solutions are the ones that are hardest to see. She took a deep breath and began to carefully work on removing the blockage. Chima winced slightly at first, but she spoke to him softly, reassuring him with each movement. "It's okay, Chima. You're going to be fine," she whispered, her hands steady, her voice calm. The task took a little longer than she had anticipated. Every minute felt like an eternity, as Ogechi worked meticulously to ensure she didn't hurt him. But when she finally removed the last of the earwax, she held it in the palm of her hand. A simple, dark mass, a symbol of years lost in silence. Ogechi stared at it for a moment, the enormity of what she had done settling in. Could this truly be the cause of Chima's silence? Was it possible that all the experts had missed something so basic? She turned to Chima, who had been staring at her with wide, curious eyes. Slowly, she motioned for him to test his hearing. "Can you hear me, Chima?" she asked gently. Chima looked around, his face a mixture of confusion and hope. And then, in a moment that felt like magic, his expression shifted. He tilted his head, as though listening for something, and then his face lit up. He looked directly at her, His eyes filled with wonder. He opened his mouth, but the words that came out were soft, tentative. "Mama?" Ogechi's heart skipped a beat. It was the first word he had spoken in years. At that moment, she knew that she had done something far beyond what anyone had ever expected from her. She had brought sound back into a world that had been silent for so long. Chima was hearing again. The world that had been a blur of motion and confusion for him was now full of sound. Chief Chigozie Okafor had lived his life by the rule that money could solve anything. In his world, his wealth had been the key to unlocking doors, whether it was to the finest schools, the best doctors, or the most luxurious things life could offer. But when it came to his son's hearing loss, even his billions couldn't buy him the answers he desperately sought. The doctors had promised him everything and delivered nothing. Each visit to a specialist had ended the same way. "There's no cure. We've tried everything." His wealth had only made him vulnerable to a system that exploited his desperation. Chigozie's frustration was palpable. It had been days since Ogechi had helped Chima regain his hearing, and the joy that filled the house was still fresh in his mind. But even amidst the relief, a storm brewed within him. He had spent millions on treatments that promised nothing more than empty hope, while a simple, overlooked solution lay in the hands of a maid, a young girl from a small village, without a medical degree. Chigozie's pride had taken a hit, and his anger at the medical system simmered beneath the surface. He sat in his office, staring out at the Lego skyline, lost in thought. Chima's first word in years still echoed in his mind. "Mama," a word that had been absent from his life for far too long. A word that broke through the silence that had dominated their world. And yet, as much as he was grateful for Ogechi's intervention, he couldn't ignore the growing resentment he felt towards the doctors who had missed the simplest diagnosis. How had they not seen it? How had they not even considered something as basic as earwax blockage? The question gnawed at him. The money he had spent, the time lost, the false promises, it all weighed heavily on his heart. His only son had suffered, and the doctors he had trusted had failed him. No amount of wealth could change that, and the bitterness of it consumed him. Chigozie picked up the phone and dialed his lawyer. "I want to file a lawsuit," he said, his voice cold and firm. "I've had enough. They've taken enough from me, and I won't let it slide." As the call ended, a sense of resolve settled over him. He would hold the medical community accountable. But there was something else that weighed on his heart, something he couldn't shake. The answer had been right in front of him the whole time, but he had failed to see it. Ogechi had given him a miracle. She had listened to her instincts, to the knowledge passed down through generations, and had healed his son when all the experts had failed. It wasn't just about the doctors anymore. It was about Ogechi, this young maid, who had done what none of the highly trained specialists could. She had changed their lives, and now Chigozie had to make sure her brilliance was recognized. He had promised her nothing more than a simple thank you, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized that she deserved more. Ogechi had shown him that healing didn't always come from fancy degrees or titles. Sometimes, the most profound knowledge came from the heart, from understanding the body and listening to what it had to say. She had done something that had eluded the best minds in the country, and now, Chigozie knew he had to do something for her. He stood up from his desk, his mind already racing with possibilities. She deserved more than just gratitude. She deserved a chance to study medicine, to gain the knowledge she so clearly craved. And he was going to make sure she got it. A few days later, Chigozie called Ogechi into his office. She entered hesitantly, her eyes lowered in respect, unsure of what to expect. She had done her job. She had helped. And now, she was simply waiting for whatever next task the Okafors would ask of her. "Sit down, Ogechi," Chigozie said, his voice softer than usual. He motioned for her to take a seat. She did so nervously, unsure of what was coming. "Ogechi," he began, his eyes meeting hers, "what you did for my son. I can't begin to thank you enough. You healed him when no one else could. I don't know how you knew what was wrong, but I'm forever grateful." Ogechi looked up at him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never expected such a compliment from him, let alone such gratitude. But it wasn't just gratitude she saw in his eyes, it was something more. A recognition. He understood the value of her gift. "I've been thinking," Chigozie continued. "You've shown me something incredible. You've demonstrated wisdom that the best doctors couldn't, and I think you deserve more than just a thank you. I'm going to send you to Harvard to study medicine." Ogechi's breath caught in her throat. "What?" she whispered, barely able to believe what she was hearing. "I know it's what you've always wanted," Chigozie said. "You've got the talent, the heart, and the instinct to be a great healer. I'll make sure you get the education you deserve. You'll study modern medicine, and you'll be able to combine that with your traditional knowledge." Tears welled in Ogechi's eyes. This was more than she had ever dreamed. Harvard, one of the best institutions in the world. She had always wanted to study medicine, but it had always seemed impossible. Now, it wasn't. She had done something that had changed the course of her life, and in return, she was being given the opportunity to change so many others. "Thank you, Chief Chigozie," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I won't disappoint you," he nodded. "I know you won't. You've already shown me how much you're capable of." Ogechi left the office that day with a heart full of gratitude, but also with the weight of a new responsibility. She wasn't just going to study medicine, she was going to change the world, one life at a time. And it all started with a simple act of listening, a simple decision to care. As she left the Okafor mansion that evening, a sense of excitement filled her. Her dream was no longer out of reach. It had just begun. The days following Ogechi's conversation with Chief Chigozie felt surreal. She moved through the Okafor mansion, like someone caught between two worlds, her life as a maid and the life she was about to begin as a medical student at one of the world's most prestigious universities. It wasn't just the luxury of the mansion that felt out of place. It was the feeling of possibility that now hovered over her like an invisible force, pushing her forward. But with every step she took toward her new future, a sense of unease lingered in her heart. Harvard, a place so far removed from the small village where she had spent her childhood, where her mother's healing knowledge was both revered and misunderstood. Ogechi was about to step into a world of science, a world of modern medicine that felt both exciting and intimidating. She had the passion, the drive, and the innate wisdom, but she knew that the journey ahead would demand more from her than anything she had ever faced. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork, travel arrangements, and preparations. Chief Chigozie had taken care of everything, from her tuition to her accommodation. Ogechi had never imagined she would be given such an opportunity. She had always dreamed of studying medicine, of combining the ancient healing practices her mother had taught her with modern medical knowledge. But now, it was all becoming a reality. One evening, as she sat in the kitchen, packing the last of her things, Chima came to find her. He had been playing with the other children in the house, but when he saw her sitting alone, he came over to her, his small hands tugging at her sleeve. He looked up at her, his big eyes filled with curiosity and concern. "Are you leaving?" he asked, his voice soft, but carrying a weight of understanding beyond his years. Ogechi smiled down at him, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "Yes, Chima. I'm going to study to become a doctor. I'm going to learn more about how to help people." Chima's eyes widened in surprise. He reached out and placed his hand on hers, his small fingers warm against her skin. "Will you come back?" he asked, his voice almost pleading. Ogechi's heart ached. She had grown so close to Chima over the past few weeks, and seeing him now, with his wide, trusting eyes, made her realize how much she would miss him. But she knew she had to leave. She had to follow this new path, even if it meant stepping away from the only home she had ever known. "I will come back, Chima," she promised, her voice steady despite the tightness in her chest. "I will always come back to help you, to help all of you." The words comforted him, and he nodded, as if understanding that this was a step Ogechi had to take. He gave her a quick hug before running off to join the others. Ogechi watched him go, a lump forming in her throat. She had made a promise to herself long ago that she would never let her circumstances define her. She had always known that she was meant for more. But now, with this opportunity before her, the weight of her dream had never felt so heavy. The next morning, Ogechi boarded a flight to the United States, her heart filled with excitement and fear. As the plane soared high above the clouds, she closed her eyes and thought about her mother, Ogechi, the woman who had taught her that healing comes not only from knowledge, but from the heart. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, reminding her to stay true to her roots, to always listen to the wisdom of the body and the spirit. When Ogechi arrived in Boston, she was overwhelmed by the contrast. The busy streets of Lagos were replaced by quiet, organized avenues, and the familiar hustle of the city felt distant. But she had made it. She was here, and as she walked into the bustling halls of Harvard Medical School, a feeling of awe washed over her. This was where she would learn the tools to change the world, to combine the ancient wisdom of her village with the advancements of modern medicine. Over the next few months, Ogechi threw herself into her studies. She learned the intricacies of human anatomy, the science behind disease and healing, and the modern methods that could transform lives. But as much as she embraced her new environment, she never lost sight of the healing methods her mother had taught her. Ogechi often found herself looking for ways to blend the traditional with the modern, searching for new ways to apply her knowledge in practical, innovative ways. The professors at Harvard were impressed with her unique perspective. She became known for her intuitive understanding of the human body. And though she sometimes struggled with the formalities of Western medicine, her natural ability to heal was undeniable. Months turned into years, and Ogechi's journey at Harvard became more than just an academic pursuit. It became a quest to bridge two worlds, the world she had come from and the one she was now a part of. Meanwhile, back in Lagos, Chigozie watched from afar as Ogechi's story began to spread. Her success at Harvard had made headlines, and soon, people began to recognize the brilliance of the young woman who had healed the Okafor heir. Chigozie felt a deep sense of pride, not just for what Ogechi had accomplished, but for the way she had transformed their family's life. His son, Chima, was thriving, and it was all because of Ogechi's intervention. One evening, as Chigozie sat in his office, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here, he realized how much Ogechi had changed their lives. She had given them the gift of sound, but she had also given them something far more valuable, a lesson in the power of intuition, healing, and the unexpected ways in which life could surprise them. Chigozie leaned back in his chair, a smile creeping onto his face. He had done more than just give Ogechi an education. He had given her the chance to live her dream, and in doing so, she had given him the greatest gift of all, hope for a future filled with endless possibilities. Years had passed since Ogechi left Lagos for Harvard. The world had changed, and so had she. The confident, accomplished young woman who returned to Nigeria was far from the shy maid who had once swept floors in the Okafor mansion. She had transformed, not only in knowledge, but in her own identity. She was no longer just Ogechi, the maid from a small village. She was now Dr. Ogechi Okafor, a medical doctor who had earned her place among the world's best. But as much as she had achieved, she knew her journey was far from over. Ogechi's heart still beat, for the same reason: it always had to heal, to help, to give. And so, despite the accolades she received and the incredible success she had found, she knew that her mission was still unfolding. She had come full circle, and now it was time to return to where it all began. When Ogechi stepped off the plane at Murtala Muhammad International Airport, the hustle and bustle of Lagos greeted her with open arms. The familiar sounds of honking taxis, street vendors, and the energy of the city flooded her senses. This was home, and yet it felt different. She had been away for so long, had seen so much of the world. But this city, with all its chaos and beauty, still called to her. Chief Chigozie was waiting for her at the airport. As soon as Ogechi saw him, a wave of emotions washed over her. The man who had given her the chance of a lifetime, the man whose son she had healed, was now standing before her. His face was graying, his eyes filled with pride and warmth. In the years since she had left, his business had flourished, but his heart had only grown bigger. He had always been a proud father, but now there was something different about him, a softening, a depth to his gaze that Ogechi hadn't noticed before. "Dr. Ogechi Okafor," Chigozie said, with a proud smile, his voice thick with emotion. "It's good to have you home." Ogechi's eyes welled with tears as she walked toward him. The journey had been long, the challenges countless, but standing here now, in her father's arms, it felt like everything had come full circle. "Thank you," Ogechi whispered, her voice shaky. "Thank you for believing in me." Chigozie pulled back slightly, his hands resting on her shoulders. "No, Ogechi. It is you who has done this. You are the one who believed in yourself. And you have changed everything. For us. For Chima. For all of us." Ogechi nodded, looking past Chigozie at the busy Lagos streets. "I've learned so much," she said quietly. "But the most important lesson is that healing isn't just about medicine. It's about people, about understanding them. The knowledge I've gained from both worlds, the world of modern medicine and the world I grew up in, has shaped who I am today." Chigozie smiled, his heart swelling with pride. He had watched her grow into someone truly remarkable. Someone who combined the best of both traditions, modern medicine and traditional wisdom. And he knew her potential was limitless. After a few moments, Chigozie motioned toward the waiting car, and they both climbed in. The ride back to the Okafor mansion was quiet, but it was the kind of silence that spoke volumes. Ogechi's thoughts were a whirl of emotions. The mansion she had once cleaned, the place that had been a symbol of her humble beginnings, was now a place of reflection. She had come so far, and now she had the tools to change lives, to heal not only with medicine, but with empathy, intuition, and love. When they arrived at the mansion, Ogechi was greeted by a sense of familiarity. Yet she also noticed how much had changed. The house had been renovated over the years, and the once stale air now hummed with new life. Her eyes wandered to the living room, where she had spent so many quiet moments watching Chima struggle in silence. Now, that silence was gone. Chima was a young man, his once quiet demeanor transformed. He had grown tall and confident, his face no longer shadowed by frustration. He looked at her with an easy smile, a smile that said everything. "Dr. Ogechi," he said softly, walking toward her. "You've done so much for me. I'll never forget what you gave me." Ogechi's heart fluttered as she embraced him. It felt like a lifetime ago that she had cleared the blockage from his ears, that single act of kindness that had changed everything. Now, here they stood, both changed, both growing. But she realized that healing wasn't just about fixing what was broken. It was about connection, about the relationships built through shared understanding and care. In the days that followed, Ogechi began to put her skills to work in the Okafor family's private clinic, offering consultations, using both modern medical practices and traditional healing methods to help those who needed it. Her reputation as a doctor who bridged both worlds quickly spread. People traveled from across Nigeria to seek her out, and her approach to medicine, rooted in both science and empathy, became a model for a new kind of care. Yet, Ogechi remained grounded in her purpose. She knew that the journey she had started was only just beginning. The world was full of challenges, but she had learned to meet them with love, patience, and understanding. She had the knowledge, the heart, and the wisdom to change lives, to heal, and to build a legacy. One evening, as Ogechi stood on the balcony of the Okafor mansion, looking out over the Lagos skyline, she felt a deep sense of peace settle within her. The city buzzed with life below, but within her, there was a quiet stillness. She had found her place in the world. She had healed, not just with medicine, but with the compassion that had always been at her core. And with that peace came a promise to continue healing, to continue learning, and to always remember the simple truth her mother had taught her so long ago. Healing begins with listening. Sometimes, the simplest acts hold the greatest power. Ogechi's journey, from a humble maid to a Harvard-trained doctor, is a testament to the strength of the human spirit. With a heart full of love and a passion for healing, She changed not only Chima's life, but also her own. Her story is a reminder that no matter where you come from, or how impossible your dreams may seem, with belief and perseverance, you can transform not just your life, but the lives of those around you. Keep believing. Your journey has just begun. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and comment the lesson you're taking home today. Your voice truly matters here.